Warm greetings and welcome to the viewers and students. You must have been experiencing an altogether different way of life during this lockdown. What is very interesting is it is not localized. It is a global phenomenon, forcing all of us to reevaluate, rethink, and to look for opportunities, to look for ways that are very much different from what we used to be all these maybe decades of humanity. The focus in today's talk is going to be on how, especially the examinations such as UPSC Civil Services, are taking this load of the pandemic. Of course, our focus is going to be on the prime social science, that is anthropology. The current time, is actually an occasion to see how a crisis unfolds opportunities and ways of life. As Winston Churchill says, no good crisis should go waste. The word good here seemed to be very highly value-laden. And hence let me see what Emmanuel Ram had to say. That is, you never let a serious crisis go to waste. This is an opportunity to do things you think you could not do before. The crisis here may look to be apparently health-related one. Whether the crisis is an economic or biological, health-related or sociological, every such crisis would leave us with re-examination of the conditions and vulnerabilities. It is the whole humanity that has been witnessing such crises. It is in such times social and technological disciplines are taking a huge beating. They have to mend their ways, they have to shift the way they think, the way they do conduct the research, the way they conclude, and how they apply the knowledge in the new situations. In such times, civil services are also being swept with a sea of changes. When it comes to the exam, in terms of the content, in terms of methodology of observation, questions and answering the questions, everything seemed to be changing. For sure, UPSC in the days to come, especially in the context of the highest exam of the land, that is civil services, is bound to experience, bound to introduce changes in two primary contexts. One, maybe revising, changing the syllabus and the content of the exam. Secondly, the change in the nature of questions and the answers that we give to the questions that may look to be apparently same as before. Hence, it's a foregone conclusion that whatever you must have studied has to be tuned, reoriented, re-examined, modified, updated, upgraded to give answers that look really contemporary. All the disciplines are bound to change. It's so fabulous to see the new content emerging. I seem to be wrongly excited by using the terms such as good crisis and fabulous in the context of emerging content. Nevertheless, we have to understand that we are studying the discipline of anthropology. We study here the evolution. We are in a way going through more or less a new ice age. Mankind has experienced several ice ages before, several pandemics and epidemics before. We could handle. This one will also pass off, whether it is by our intentional ways of changing and handling, or even if we have given up. I think this is going to be another re-examination of Darwinian ideas that we have to be taking up in anthropology. Whatever may be the effort, whether it is by us, by the nature, I think mankind will experience, will pass off this particular episode as well. But I think this will leave us with several lessons that we will have to learn, especially in a discipline such as anthropology, where we study the change. I think we will be having a choice to prioritize and change the course of life. Those who do not mend their ways, are bound not to survive. Coming to the crux of the talk today, in the field of anthropology, my goodness, the variety of content that is emerging is so novel and mind-boggling. Every social system seems to be changing. The researchers in sociocultural anthropology, biological anthropology, and several other subfields that are a part of your curriculum are experiencing a sea change at a speed that was never seen before. And the kind of depth to which things have been changing are so unimaginable. Within a short span of less than, say, 3 months, it's like the universities, the schools of learning, the researchers seem to have woken up to the new. And hence, beyond doubt, though it is tough to say and tough to accept, see, I'm not speaking exclusively of any particular social science, but I'm speaking about the field of anthropology, especially in the context of UPSC here. In this subject, we study man, his cultures, his evolution, his behaviors. We have no choice but to revisit the way we have learned and what we have learned. Meaning, in very clear terms, what you must have learned as a student, as a teacher of anthropology. This is a time to test what we have studied. It shows beyond doubt that whatever we must have studied has to be redone in altogether a new perspective. That's where the very exciting challenge, both for the students and for the teachers. Let me reiterate this fact. The pandemic is not simply biological. The pandemic has a very deep socio-cultural impact. And hence, due to the fact that anthropology is a subject which deals primarily with the socio-cultural ways of man, everything in the discipline is bound to change. It is not an overstatement. I am here in this particular episode. I am introducing some of the very vital studies that have come up in various journals and magazines and research bodies. I am planning to do a minimum of 2 videos in this particular context. It is to drive home a point that things are not the same. I am going to give you some of the examples to show that the content is changing. Sometimes, it is going to the level of giving a new definition to the very basic concepts. And so we are going to see in these couple of videos a kind of a bird's eye view at the very interesting articles that are being published. I know this is going to be a very beautiful roller coaster ride for you in the next few minutes. Before going to examine different kinds of articles that are published, here you bear in mind that having been appearing for this examination of UPSC, you have to understand that this is not a static organization. Though one of the earliest institutions of the country dealing with civil services, though with the kind of history that it has, it is not a static one. Of course, in the recent past, with various changes that it has been introducing at a swifter pace, it has proved itself that it is a very dynamic organization. And the students have to match with that dynamism with which the UPSC has been moving ahead. The dynamism has to be reflected in the way you respond to the questions that it is going to pose. The questions are not going to be so very direct. They are going to be interpretative, your understanding, your practical knowledge-based questions. And hence the couple of videos are going to focus at this very vital thing that is necessary for the civil services aspirant. So I'm presenting to you here some of the researches that have come to publication so that you get an idea. about how and what has been happening in the discipline. Anthropology is traditionally seen as a discipline that studies the human variation and similarities. In terms of the fields of social, linguistic, archaeological and biological branches of the discipline, such an examination is conducted through comparative perspective. These comparisons are to find reasons for how and why there are similarities and differences. I think the pandemic opened the Pandora's box now. Vital questions have come to the fore, such as the vagaries of globalization, the tendencies of localization. Now, before all that becomes a part of our discussion, let me bring to you some interesting insights from the recent past. There is this International Journal of Science, which has published in the month of February. You can actually look at this graph. The graph shows, so the publication of the Science Journal was in February. By February end it was out, and then it shows the rapid increase in the preprints and the publications. Such a huge number of write-ups that have come up. So this increased publications show the kind of social research and the kind of data collection that is happening. And in that very article, they were actually showing this particular picture, how the way research is being conducted, the caution or the kind of basic aspects that we follow in the research, they seem to be changing. So it's a permanent change in every aspect that we see. Now, when I'm saying this, fieldwork traditions, conducting the fieldwork is one of the very vital aspects of anthropology. And visiting the field was one of the primary characteristics of the discipline. Now, with the kind of pandemic that we are experiencing, the definition of field itself is changing. The definition of field work is changing. The way we are conducting research is changing. So this is one of the topics. I mean, when I take up the next courses, I will anyway be incorporating each chapter by chapter, topic by topic, how things have changed, how definitions, researches, case studies have been coming up. That anyway will be the course of action in the future. But let me show you something else here. In this particular episode, I will be incorporating 5 or 6 major studies. And in the next part to come, we will be flooding with a good lot of about a dozen of different studies that would help you to identify the gravity of change the discipline is experiencing. So let us have a look at this. This is one study. I mean, this could be a question, a direct question that might come up in your exam. Anthropology in public health emergencies. What is the role of anthropology in public health emergencies? Now, as we see here, this was the article that was published in the very recent past, and then you can see that they have considered the evolution of how things were happening, what we have learned in different pandemics. So this is actually something that comes as a comparison to what we have learned earlier. So remember this particular topic, namely anthropology in public health emergencies. Now let me have a look at something else for you here. When I'm picking up the things, one, I'm doing it from the very recent past. Secondly, I am trying to showcase to you the kind of questions that might come up in UPSC from these very changes. What it reads is using local knowledge in emerging infectious diseases, and as you could see here, this is a very recent study, the 4th of April 2020. It is this article where we see the emerging infectious diseases It is actually an article that talks about how the definitions of infectious and non-infectious diseases are changing, and how the social control mechanisms, social regulations to handle such kind of infectious diseases. So it is actually the preparedness of the political system and economic system. So it is an all comprehensive article that talks about the economic and political preparedness. That actually shows a vital change in the content of economic and political anthropology. This is a very prestigious journal, Medical Anthropology Journal, the journal that houses cross-cultural studies in health and illness. They have come up with a very interesting article, COVID-19 Risk, Fear and Fallout. This is that article that has shown a new dimension of medical anthropology. So for questions such as meaning and scope of, changing meaning and scope of medical anthropology, this article has actually introduced several vitals. I'll give you one small example. You have one topic called mutation, where which becomes very vital in the context of current pandemic. This article was talking about how the mutations take place and how counter mutations, reverse mutations have to be engineered, and how the medical anthropological research has to respond and how to predict such kind of changes that might occur. In the next video, we are actually going to see one very important study by a Chinese biological anthropologist who has actually questioned the way the Chinese political system has been handling the current crisis. She was in a way trying to compare or give the evolution of things from the AIDS to the contemporary times. That anyway we will be talking about in the next episode to come. Right now let me have a look at this one. The Science Journal was talking about this. It was talking about a completely new culture of doing research, and when it talks about doing research, of course there is a emphasis on biological research in this particular magazine, but then it also leaves a lot of a scope for the sociological research to change. Because after all, when you talk about the social distance is not simply the social distance we talk about, it is the biological proximity to which you approach your neighbor, your people around. Look at this. This is the Sapiens Journal of Anthropology, which was talking about the rituals. So there is a topic in your anthropology that is, if you look at chapter 5 in paper 1, you have religion. As a part of it, you study rituals. Some of the rituals that have become a subject of study, and this is the journal that was talking about the ritual of hand wash that we are learning in the contemporary times. There have been occasions, there have been cultures that have been following this ritual in a very ritualistic way. So this particular article was talking about the study of rituals globally. And yeah, look at this. This is a very recent one. May 1st, 2020. This article talks about from HIV to COVID-19, how anthropology with an urgency is introducing the political engagement. I mean, this is that article which has beautifully presented the requirement of political, economic and legal systems, how they have to engage, how they have to bring change so that anthropology can reiterate itself. See, I mean, it's a very interesting time. The students of anthropology, the teachers of anthropology at one point of time must have felt the the question of their relevance. I mean, you must have studied in your respective nationalities, if at all you are a viewer from across the globe, not simply from India. If you have seen various regional anthropologies, the discipline of anthropology at some point of time or the other must have felt this insufficiency of requirement for the contemporary times. But then this seems to be an opportunity. See, I'm not feeling happy on such an occasion, but then this is actually an opportunity wherein you can come out with the new kind of ideas. So that's where the pandemic has offered. Now look at this. All of us know her, Jane Goodall. On this year's Earth Day, April 22nd, this documentary was released, The Hope. I think this is a very right word that we will have to reiterate in this particular situation of, if at all I can call it, the hopeless situation. She was here in this particular documentary to give voice to primatologists. You must be knowing her as an environmentalist, an activist, a primatologist. She was here to question, to re-examine the way our laws of environment, the way we have dealt with the environment. And it is in this particular documentary, she once again comes up to challenge the way humanity in the post-modern age has committed those mistakes, those unpardonable sins for which it is the entire humanity, the entire environment is becoming a victim. So it is here, she says, we have to run. In the documentary you can actually see her running. That there is no time, there's very little time left. If at all we do not act now, it is never. Maybe that this pandemic may wash off a huge lot of humanity. So maybe perhaps if you find time, you can actually visit on her. And then coming to the other very interesting study here, does your microbiome shape your friendships? Of course, this is, as you can see here, an article that was published in 2019 August. I mean, at which time I think none of us were actually in that last year, none of us were actually in a position to predict things of this gravity, this kind of fatal change across the world, in all the spheres. But I think what she has written seemed to be very valid today. I mean, very interesting. She was actually writing about the rituals. As you could see in that picture, there's a handshake, and then you have all the germs there, and with that handshake, how you are exchanging. See, for every ritual, there may be, for every entity, that's what we see in the discipline of anthropology, there is the other side also. You must have heard of these functions and dysfunctions. When we are now insisting on the hand wash and then the kind of sanitization, she is trying to look at the other side, maybe the essential microorganisms that were actually necessary for us. Maybe we are in a way getting rid of them as well. So that might have its own counterproductive effort. She was examining something else here. I mean, this is a story that I would want to slightly elaborate from her work so that you can enthusiastically go back, read their works, and then appreciate the kind of work that they have done. Now, this is the lady who tried to work on the bonobos and chimpanzees. You can see that picture there. This is the Tanzanian region of Africa where she was actually working on nothing else, but then she was somebody who, in her write-up you can say this is not a very good morning, because she was going to work on the fecal evidences. She was working on the fecal evidences of the bonobos and monkeys and chimpanzees. And when she was collecting those samples, the samples were to be collected for various researchers, maybe some biologists, some primatologists, somebody, and from the sociologists, etc. Because it is here that in the grooming, the fecal evidences that are spread across the body. And these fecal evidences are being examined in comparison with the human fecal evidences, and to see the comparison of microorganisms there. I mean, this she was trying to do in the effort to see the evolution of man, whether that particular region is the one that resulted, the Tanzanian region, was the origin of the humans. So you can actually see here, these are adding to all the other kinds of evidences that you must have studied. As a student of archaeology, you must have looked at the bone evidences, the dental evidences, or several other kind of sociological evidences, and even the DNA evidences. Now, this kind of study is actually revolutionizing the way you present the data. I mean, I think you can understand the kind of difference in the content that you might be presenting for the exam. This is a small other thing that I am trying to, but then this is a very huge study of rituals. This is a puberty ritual that the lady had studied through participant observation. I am sure some of you at least must have studied the topics of menarche and menopause, the kind of puberty rites, rites of passage that are a part of your discipline. And she has actually brought out a sea change in the rituals that are noticed in this part of the world. I have given here the lady's name, which you can actually browse through, and then you can also read that particular article. This is only a tip of the iceberg that I am trying to present to you. There are going to be huge lot of other topics that I will be incorporating in my next talk with you, but then that is not the end of it as well. Do not forget this. I have said, I have reiterated that whatever you have learned as a teacher, as a student of anthropology, every bit of it, every stone of it has to be overturned. You'll have to re-examine every damn thing that you have done there, starting from maybe the kinship behaviors to how you define the families, how you define the social distance rules, how you define rituals, and how an anthropologist has to actually approach his subject. What are the various ways in which the socio-cultural aspects are going to be examined and changed. All this with several other vital studies. See, what I have presented in today's talk are mostly to do, I think, on the biological side, the kind of case studies that I am trying to present to you. But in the upcoming video, I will be talking about the other branches as well, that is linguistic anthropology, sociocultural anthropology, etc. And we will also be throwing some light on the governmental programs and how they are changing across the globe, especially when it comes to the tribal communities, etc. So this is the first episode of the 2-episode talk that we are having here. Hope you have got some hold on what we are going to do in the future as anthropologists, as students and researchers of anthropology. Keep watching, and do not forget to subscribe to our channel and give your responses, likes, dislikes, whatsoever, and your requirements. You would want to listen to something else in these videos. Feel free to write and respond and subscribe. Have a great time as we are trying to come out of the difficult times of the pandemic. If at all the government say stay home. If they are allowing you to do some part of the work outside, be rule bound, follow the rules, and then be respectfully sociological. I know we are all gregarious, but then the social distances have to be based on what your respective governments have directed you to. So have a great time ahead. Thank you so much. Signing off. I am Sosin. I am the founder of Sosin Classes, this particular organization. I have specialized in anthropology with researchers in several parts of the world, including India and parts of Australia. And that's a brief background of myself. I would keep giving you many more details in the upcoming videos. Have a great time ahead. Thank you so much.